Welcome back, Wealth Builders. Michael Rosmer here with Richucation. Thank you for being with us. We're talking today about the subject of supply and demand in price. Okay, supply and demand in price. And this is pretty, it's kind of a basic economics lesson. Nothing too fancy, but still an important concept to realize. Okay, so the first basic thing, we're going to go beyond, the basic thing of, okay, price is determined by supply and demand, because we want to understand the idea of market price, okay, and how market price plays into our return on investment and plays into some traps that we can fall into buying the wrong things and what we can do about avoiding them, okay? So the whole idea of supply and demand is, hey, we have supply, right? And so supply is on some sort of a curve, and we've got demand, it's on some sort of a curve, and where they meet, loosely speaking, is going to be price. Okay, so in other words, the market is negotiating. It's like, hey, there's people with supply want to sell. Okay, supply wants to sell, and demand wants to buy. Demand wants to buy. Okay? And of course, these people want to sell for high enough that it's worth it for them to sell. And these people want to buy for low enough that it's worth it for them to buy. And so where they can find an agreement, that is our point that determines the price that ultimately is paid. Okay? Now that's very big scale, because in any individual transaction that can vary quite a bit from the market price. Okay, so that's starting off our basic idea. Now, what we get out of this as a side piece is there's the subject of inflation. Okay, now why do we need to pay attention to inflation? Because what inflation means is that the supply of money relative to goods and services is increasing. Okay, so now if we use the Austrian School of Economics, then they say it's just increase in money supply. The technical term is increase in prices, is basically inflation. We're going to talk about a little more of the Austrian side of it, right? Because what I want to point out here is that the demand is not just emotional demand, it's the amount of money available, okay? So inflation, we have more money, okay, which is going to, assuming that the supply stays the same, which it might not, drives up prices. Okay? If the supply increases, then there will be, it won't drive up prices. Okay, so that's, at some point, hopefully there's a limitation on supply, and, sometimes you might say hopefully there isn't, like you can drive to zero. So that's one piece. The second piece is we want to pay attention to how the availability of money, okay? So, availability of money is the driving piece, and that this is affected by things like regulations, booms, and busts. Okay? So, as an example, I purchased some real estate, and I was projecting that the real estate market would go up at a certain rate. Okay? Turned out that I was somewhat off. Now, what changed? How come I was off? Well, one of the things that changed was the regulations on lending changed to tighten the lending requirements, which meant that the availability of capital decreased, right? Which had a mitigating effect on how much prices went up. It still worked out okay, but that's a consideration. Okay? Then you've got booms and busts. So if there's an influx of people, lots of people are making lots of money and things are going on, there's more money, that's going to drive up demand, which drives up price. Okay? Note that it's not necessarily driving up value. Okay? And we're going to pay attention to that a little more later. Booms, part of the thing that's threatening about a boom is it can have the appearance of driving up value. Okay? Danger appearance of driving up value. Okay? Very, very potentially dangerous. So you got to understand cycles is basically what we're saying. Okay, so the market goes through various cycles. There's different things that drive those cycles. In a macro sense, it's debt, typically. But in a micro situation, it could be commodity prices, it could be a particular employer going under or whatever, right? So different things can drive those cycles. All right, and that brings us to the last part of this, which is understanding, what did I write here? Understanding, that hype, okay? So demand is not necessarily based on anything real. There could be hype, which could drive up prices, okay? So this is part of the boom thing. Hype, we want to be very careful of booms. Drives up prices, okay? There's a Warren Buffett quote that he says, "Be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful." Okay? So when everybody's going nuts about something, probably not a great thing to be in. Okay? You probably want to be getting out of it. And that's just because it will rise too much, which can turn around and create problems. And we'll talk later about how that works and why that's the case and how you can kind of see what's reasonable and see what's not, and so help to avoid being caught in the massive hype. Okay? So very, very important just to understand supply and demand in price, understanding that when demand is very low, that can mean the price is artificially low and you can get great value. If demand is very high, if there's hype, then usually the opposite. And you don't really want to be you want to use the forces of supply and demand as opposed to be a servant to them or, get beaten down by it. Okay, so I hope that helps, give you some ideas. Reach out to us, join the action classes. We're going to work with you to grow your wealth to the next level, help you become rich. I'll see you on the next video.